Arrakis is this unrelenting anvil against which people are beaten and shaped and forged into something that's stronger.
There's something very spiritual about that sand, which on the surface is really nothing, but underneath has a really diverse biological backstory.
One of my favorite lines from Frank Herbert is, when you end a novel, it's like a train coming into the station that doesn't stop. You just jam on the brakes and let the sparks fly into people's imagination. Arrakis is a test, is what the Fremen say. And the player comes right into the heart of that test. Dune Awakening is a survival game at the base level. And it begins like a traditional survival game, like you're looking for water, you're looking for shelter. Where will you find water in the desert? Will you take it from others? So when we talk about survival, sure, we start with the basic kind of survive. And then when you've survived long enough, it's now time to think about political survival and how you progress within the universe. The approach we take when building a world like Arrakis is we kind of have to think about where are the stark lines and how do we draw these epic spaces? How do we make them feel huge and the player feels dwarfed by everything they see around them?
The intention was every time we saw the desert, it was highly brutal, and if you went out into the desert without the right protection and without the right knowledge, that it was sure death. If we looked at references from some of the hottest deserts in the world, the visuals that we saw from those deserts weren't enough. We needed this world to be even harsher.
So we've been working with Legendary since the very beginning. They've been very generous with sharing with us assets from the film and allowing us to see things from the film and allowing us to really understand the vision that Denis Villeneuve has for the world and his characters and the way he's grounding Arrakis. But of course, a game is a much larger scale, so we need to expand upon that vision. We have our own army of concept artists who are sending things back and forth with Legendary all the time. One of my best moments on this project so far actually was I got to go and visit the set of the first film with a group of the people from Funcom, the art directors, the lead artists, and we got to walk around in the actual sets that they had built in classic old school set building, massive palaces, and we got to look at the ornithopters from the inside and the outside, right? We got to walk around them and get a sense of their scale.
Well, I think what they had done really well is they'd been quite inspired by the world that we had built in Dune Part 1. Now, in a film, you're sort of led on a journey by the director and by the script, whereas in a game, you have the opportunity to sort of create your own narrative and create your own journey. The most exciting aspect for me is the fact that you can take what you've enjoyed and loved and you can build your own stories and your own places. And that to me is the ultimate goal, is to have, complete control.
Using Unreal 5 to create a game is obviously one of the better choices. Unreal 5 gives us flexibility through the blueprinting system. It allows us to handle amazing graphics through the rendering system, the lighting system such as Lumen. Lumen technology allows proper light bouncing. If I had to say one thing in the game that really benefits from Lumen, it's player crafted spaces. In our case, it's like you build a room and you place a window, and the window lets in natural light, and the light will fill the room in a way that feels real. And that technology hasn't existed before. Before Unreal 5, in the olden days, you had to use what we called the LOD system. And that meant that you had to create assets at different LOD levels, so it doesn't slow down everybody's computer. With Unreal 5, we have this new technology called nanite that breaks things down into the right amount of polygons at the right distance. So for us, as a company, this has made an amazing difference to the visual detail of the world. It allows us to create one really amazing looking cliff piece, for example, and then doesn't matter how far away or how close we place it, it performs well and it looks great.
Where Unreal worked for us on Dune was that it was a fantastic pre-production and planning tool. On Dune Part 2, we had some very complicated scenes, and we were able to previs all the way from Budapest what the light was going to be doing well in advance. It's the only tool that I've used, I would say, in my 25 years of shooting that is able to be used across a wide spectrum of films by different types of filmmakers.
The most iconic creature in the Dune universe is the sandworm of Arrakis. And so we've tried to represent this in the game in multiple ways. So as a player, your first step's on the open sand. you hear the hiss of the sand in the distance as a sandworm begins to move towards you. And when it gets close, you hear the roar as it erupts from the sand nearby. And at that point, you have only seconds to live if you cannot make it to rocky ground. So this is your first experience with sandworms, and these are the little ones. When you go into the deep desert, when you're harvesting spice, the giant ring-mouth sandworms that we've seen in the film will erupt underneath the spice blows and suck harvesters and equipment down into the sand beneath them. There's really only one rule. The sandworm will always come. Humans have always had this innate drive to create something, to build worlds, whether it's in their head, whether it's in text, whether it's on screens, whether it's in games. Funcom as a company has been on this journey for a long time, creating multiplayer worlds where players can live out their dreams and fantasies. We were there in the beginning with massively multiplayer online games. We've been there in the beginning with survival open world crafting games. And Dune is a combination of those legacies, bringing us forward into the future. It's the culmination of what Funcom means as a company and what we can deliver. And this legacy means that we need to really pay attention to what we're creating and how we create it for the fans. Because I think at the heart of this, there's a lot of people out there who really want to live in the universe that Frank Herbert created. And they really want to live in the visual world of the films that they see from Villeneuve. And so we need to create the gap between those two possibility spaces and create a game world where people can live out their fantasies that they've taken from Dune. And yes, it's a huge legacy, and it feels at times extremely overwhelming, but we really hope that we can deliver something for everybody.
The most important thing music lends to a game is the emotional part. And this is something music does better than any other thing.
Sound is 50% of the experience. You can play a game without sound, but sound will convey the emotions that we have written and planned for. It connects the unconnected. We are approaching launch, and I'm here in London to watch the beautiful soundtrack being recorded at Air Lyndhurst.
It's been in my mind since the very beginning that we have to try and record this at Air. The sound of the hall is, in my mind, it's the best place in the world to record. And also the sense of scale that it lends to a production like this is exactly what we need. It gives us this huge sound that we cannot achieve anywhere else. The other thing that is equally important is the level of the musicians here. It's a level of perfection that you don't really encounter very much.
Being there and hearing the songs been a fantastic experience. We're looking forward to get all this great music into the game.
When Arild first approached me with this project, he said it was Dune, and I got very inspired to work. I could see so many things that we could do with the music. It is always a bit of a challenge to work on something that other people have worked on before you. Hans Zimmer's score from the films is spectacular music, and you have to take that into consideration when you're working on the same IP.
Knut is particularly interesting. He has great anthemic songs, and it was natural for me to get in touch with him when we started this project. So we experimented quite a bit in the beginning. The Dune books, there is fantastic lore. It's an established universe in every way. But it also have these limitations. There's no computers, there's no gunpowder in the world. It's not the typical digital sci-fi slick soundscape you're used to in many games.
In the game, you can be anyone you like, you can belong to any faction. So there are very few areas and situations in the game that are purely Atreides, purely Harkonnen, purely Fremen. So you have to approach it in a different way.
Knut is a classical composer. He composes for orchestra, but we started out experimenting with synthesizers, and that was a really fun exercise to see what he would come up with. We definitely wanted these heavy synths, broken up brass and huge arcing strings. Arrakis is just a huge open landscape, ice cold at night, burning hot at day. You're alone as a player, and we really needed the music to fit and work with the landscapes. We came up with pillars for what we want to achieve. One of the pillars we wanted to use was flow, which means how sound needs to flow over time, not be too intrusive. The next pillar was information. Information is very important to players, and sound plays a big part of that. And the last pillar is evocation. We want to evoke feelings with our sound design.
From the very beginning, we decided that the music should be written in D. D because it's a very practical to write in, with everything recorded in the same tempo, in the same key. We have different parts, we have different layers. Suddenly, we have endless possibilities for variation.
The deliveries from Knut are delivered in stems, which are interchangeable and layered, so we can play around with it and adapt naturally to any situation. What we might start with is ambient music, supporting the normal game scenario, a player walking around, maybe building, doing survival gameplay, just beautiful music to support the visuals. Then suddenly a war might appear, or you might be attacked by a terrible scavenger. We need the music to change fast. We have a traditional adaptive music system where we use horizontal layering and vertical layering to do that.
On this project, I've been able to do a lot of creative things with the music that I haven't been able to really work with before. It allowed me to step out of the box of traditional orchestral thinking and explore a much bigger musical world. Windsack is an interesting track. The vocalist is very central here. The singer in this track, she represents Mother Arrakis, the voice of Arrakis. She's the voice of the desert. It doesn't become music before you put a human in there. And that human makes it music. And every now and then you meet a performer that can really elevate your music and your intentions. You just feel in awe. It's like a religious experience. It's just there. You cannot really imagine how you could write it down, because you can't. You cannot write this down. You rely on someone that can actually bring it to life. We are extremely happy that we were able to do this here and with these people. The musicians are such a high level that you cannot really get that anywhere else. It's been an amazing experience, and it's elevating our game to a different level.
In terms of iconic sounds, we try to do what we think is right, and you never know what will become iconic. It could be a small sound, it could be a UI sound reminding you of a sandstorm approaching. There's the worms, which are maybe the most iconic part of the books. It's been very interesting to work with these worms and try to come up with our own soundscape for them. In the books, they are described, sound-wise, as just hiss of sand. What you will hear when the worm approaches is you might hear your vehicle shaking, your building shaking. The sandworms are divine environmental creatures, not monsters. They will breach through the ground and make huge, breathy screams, but still we try not to make them too monster-like. Sound is increasingly important in this type of games, and in general today I think it's more respected than ever. You have the technical aspects where sound need to convey information. Sound design can tell you what's inside a box, what's the technology behind this. We want players to be able to close their eyes and just listen to the soundscape and the wind and what's going on to understand where they are, whether it's in Sheol, which is in a radioactive area, the Red Desert, is known as Vermilius Gap, or the opening area, Hagabas in South. It's truly wonderful to work with sound and have a great team to work with, and such an amazing IP as Dune to explore.
The most important function of music in visual media is to lend emotion to the visuals. And this is something music does better than any other thing. Another very important function of the music is to create a sense of time and space. What it does for the game is that it helps transport the player into a new universe, to a strange new world, to the world of Dune, to Arrakis.